Peter.
Caroline, very quickly, just following up on the question on immigration first. President Trump, during the course of the campaign in 2024, said the following about illegal immigration. He said, they're going back home where they belong, and we start with the criminals. There are many, many criminals. NBC News has learned that ICE arrested 1,179 undocumented immigrants on Sunday, but nearly half of them, 566 of the migrants, appear to have no prior criminal record besides entering the country illegally. Is the president still focused exclusively, which is a civil crime, it's not criminal?
It's a federal crime.
So I'm asking, though, he said he was going to focus on those violent offenders first. So is violent offenders no longer the predicate for these people to be deported?
The president has said countless times on the campaign trail, I've been with him at the rallies, I know you've been there covering them too, Peter, that he is focused on launching the largest mass deportation operation in American history of illegal criminals. And if you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal. And so therefore, you are subject to deportation.
I apologize for interrupting. So to be clear, it's not violent criminals do not receive precedence in terms of the deportations taking place.
The president has also said two things can be true at the same time. We want to deport illegal criminals, illegal immigrants from this country, but the president has said that, of course, the illegal criminal drug dealers, the rapists, the murderers, the individuals who have committed heinous acts on the interior of our country and who have terrorized law-abiding American citizens, absolutely, those should be the priority of ICE, but that doesn't mean that the other illegal criminals who entered our nation's borders are off the table.
Understood. Then let me ask you a separate question about the confusion that still exists across the country right now as it relates to the freeze or the pause as it's described. President Trump, of course, ran one of the key policy items was that he was going to lower prices, lower the cost of everything from groceries, as he often said. But in many of the cases, it would seem that some of these moves could raise prices for real Americans on everything from low-income heating, that program, child care programs. Will nothing that the president's doing here in terms of the freeze in these programs raise prices on ordinary Americans?
What particular actions are you referring to that would?
I'm referring to LHEAP right now. That's the low-income heating program, for example. We can talk about, there's no clarity, so I could refer to a lot of them. We don't know what they are specifically. Can you tell us that LHEAP is not one of those affected?
So you're asking a hypothetical based on programs that you can't even identify.
No,
what I can tell you is that
since you guys haven't identified, let's do it together just for Americans at home. Medicaid, is that affected?
I gave you a list of examples: Social Security, Medicare, welfare benefits, food stamps that will not be impacted by this federal pause. I can get you the full list after this briefing from the Office of Management and Budget. But I do want to address the cost cutting because that's certainly very important and cutting the cost of living in this country. President Trump has taken historic action over the past week to do that. He actually signed a memorandum to deliver emergency price relief for American families, which took a number of actions. I can walk you through those. He also repealed many onerous Biden administration regulations. We know over the past 4 years, American households has been essentially taxed $55,000 in regulations from the previous administration. President Trump, with the swipe of his pen, rescinded those, which will ultimately put more money back in the pockets of the American people. So deregulation is a big deal. And then when it comes to energy, I mean, the president signed an executive order to declare a national energy emergency here at home, which is going to make America energy dominant. We know that energy is one of the #1 drivers of inflation. And so that's why the president wants to increase our energy supply to bring down costs for Americans. The Trump energy boom is incoming, and Americans can expect that.
Please share that. Thank you.
Caroline, I think some of the confusion may be here with this pause on federal funding. You've made it clear you're not stopping funds that go directly to individuals, but there certainly are lots of organizations that receive funding and then may pass along a benefit. Meals on Wheels, for one. They provide meals for over 2.2 million seniors. What is the president's message to Americans out there, many of whom supported him and voted for him, who are concerned that this is going to impact them directly, even if, as you said, the funding isn't coming directly to their wallet?
I have now been asked and answered this question 4 times. To individuals at home who receive direct assistance from the federal government, you will not be impacted by this federal freeze. In fact, OMB just sent out a memo to Capitol Hill with Q&A to clarify some of the questions and the answers that all of you are asking me right now. Again, direct assistance will not be impacted. I've been asked and answered about this OMB memo. There's many other topics of the day. Jackie Heimer.
Direct assistance, Caroline, it's going to another organization and then trickling down.
Direct assistance that is in the hands of the American people will not be impacted. Again, as I said to Peter, we will continue to provide that list as it comes to fruition. But OMB right now is focused on analyzing the federal government's spending, which is exactly what the American people elected President Trump to do.
And one question on immigration, Caroline, on immigration. Of the 3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office. Can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws, and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
You made a point with the worst first. They all have a criminal record?
And welcome to the briefing.
If they broke our nation's laws, yes, they are criminal. Yes.
Thank you. On stripping security details for figures like John Bolton, Pompeo, Brian Hook, Senator Tom Cotton said that he's seen the intelligence and the threat from Iran is real for anyone who played a role in the Soleimani strike. He voiced concern it wouldn't just impact those individuals, but potentially their family, innocent bystanders, friends, anyone who's near them when they're out in public. Is the president open to reconsidering his decision?
The president was asked and answered this yesterday, and he was firm in his decision despite some of the comments that you had referenced. And he's made it very clear that he does not believe American taxpayers should fund security details for individuals who have served in the government for the rest of their lives. And there's nothing stopping these individuals that you mentioned from obtaining private security. That's where the president stands on it. I have no updates on that.
Is there any concern that this decision might jeopardize the administration's ability to hire the best advisors for these kinds of positions in the future?
No, in fact, I've talked to the Presidential Personnel Office, who has told me directly that there is such an influx of resumes for this administration that it's incredibly overwhelming. There is no lack of talent for the Trump administration. Reagan,
would he take any responsibility if anything happened to these people? Would he feel at all that his decision was a factor in that?
The president was asked and answered this yesterday. I defer you to his comments. Reagan, since you're in the back row, I hear you. The back row hasn't gotten much attention in the last 4 years, so I'm happy to answer your question.
I can project. Does the president intend to permanently cut off funding to NGOs that are bringing illegal foreign nationals to the country, such as Catholic Charities?
I am actually quite certain that the president signed an executive order that did just that, and I can point you to that.
One more, Karoline. President Trump issued an executive order on increased vetting for refugees and visa applications.
Right.
Part of that order was considering an outright ban for countries that have deficient screening processes. Has the president considered yet which countries might fall into this category, or countries like Afghanistan or Syria under consideration for a full ban?
Yeah, so the president signed an executive order to streamline the vetting for visa applicants and for illegal immigrants in this country who are coming, of course, from other nations. It also directed the Secretary of State to review the process and make sure that other countries around the world are being completely transparent with our nation and the individuals that they are sending here. And so the Secretary of State has been directed to report back to the president. I haven't seen that report yet. We've only been here for a few days.
One on the freeze in federal funding. Who advised the president on the legality of telling government agencies that they don't have to spend money that was already appropriated by Congress?
Well, as the OMB memo states, this is certainly within the confines of the law. So White House counsel's office believes that this is within the president's power to do it, and therefore he's doing it.
Okay, so they disagree with lawmakers who say that they don't have the power to freeze this funding.
Again, I would point you to the language in the memo that clearly states this is within the law.
And all that happened on Friday night. The administration fired several inspectors general without giving Congress the 30-day legally required notification that they were being fired. I think only 2 were left at DHS and the DOJ. And then yesterday we saw several prosecutors, I believe 12, fired from the Justice Department who worked on the investigations into the president. As you know, they are career prosecutors, therefore they are afforded civil service protections. How is the administration deciding which laws to follow and which ones to ignore?
So it is the belief of this White House and the White House counsel's office that the president was within his executive authority to do that. He is the executive of the executive branch, and therefore he has the power to fire anyone within the executive branch that he wishes to. There's also a case that went before the Supreme Court in 2020, Scala Law LLC versus the Customs, Bureau Protection. I would advise you to look at that case, and that's the legality that this White House was resting on.
You're confident that if they bring lawsuits against you, the prosecutors who were fired, that they will succeed?
We will win in court,
And
yes.
did he personally direct this, given they worked on the classified documents investigation and the election interference investigation?
This was a memo that went out by the Presidential Personnel Office, and the president is the leader of this White House, so
it did
yes.
come from him.
Yes.
Karoline?
Sure.
Thank you. Congrats on your first day behind the podium.
Thank you.
President Trump ended funding for UNRWA and also designated the Houthis a foreign terrorist organization.
That's right.
Both were decisions that the previous administration had reversed. So here's my question. Will there be an investigation into who gave the previous administration this terrible advice?
Well, That's a very good point. I haven't heard discussions about such an investigation, but it wouldn't be a bad idea considering that the Houthis certainly are terrorists. They have launched attacks on U.S. naval ships across this world, and so I think it was a very wise move by this administration to redesignate them as a terrorist group, because they are, and I think it was a foolish decision by the previous administration to do so. As for an investigation, I'm not sure about that, but it's not a bad idea. Josh.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. Can you give us an update on the president's plans for his tariff agenda? He spoke a lot about this yesterday, and there's a couple of dates coming up that he's spoken to. Number one, February 1st, he's alluded to both the potential for tariffs for Canada and Mexico, but also China to take effect on those days. What's he thinking about that?
Yeah.
Should those countries expect that?
Again, he was asked and answered this question this past weekend when he took a lot of questions from the press, and he said that the February 1st date for Canada and Mexico still holds.
What about the China 10% tariff that he also mused about last Tuesday going into effect on the same day?
Yeah, the president has said that he is very much still considering that for February 1st.
Separately, yesterday he talked also about sectoral tariffs on, for instance, pharmaceuticals as well as semiconductor computer chips. He talked about steel, aluminum, and copper. What's the timeline on those? Is that a similar sort of coming days thing?
Yeah, so when the president talked about that in his speech yesterday, that actually wasn't a new announcement. That was within a presidential memorandum that he signed in one of the first days here in the White House on his America First trade agenda. So there's more details on those tariffs in there. As far as a date, I don't have a specific date to read out to you, but the president is committed to implementing tariffs effectively, just like he did in his first term.
NBC security reporter just faced one of the most grillings of his career during a heated debate on politics. Karoline Leavitt did not hold back exposing what she called the media clear based on illegal what standard has a standard debate quickly has Karoline called out NBC reporter question where there comes by illegal immigration. The reporter tried two different has station, but Karoline hit back with hard face, leaving him for words. At one point, when the reporter claiming we only reporter the faced Karoline or fear back that tweet scope. They just pushing and England NCB was put he in the through sport, and his exchange was proof that not everything is buying that. Yeah. What do you think? Was Karoline leaving right, or did NBC have a violate? Let me know in the comments.